My name is Alexandra, Alex for short, and I'm 32 years old. I never expected that dropping out of college to build my tech company would lead to my own brother publicly humiliating me at his promotion party. Standing there in that crowded room, hearing him call me his useless dropout sister in front of everyone, including my father who nodded in agreement, felt like a knife to my heart. Before I tell you what happened next morning when they showed up at my office, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and subscribe to hear more stories about underestimated women who proved everyone wrong. I grew up in a family where academic excellence wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. My father, Robert, was a tenured professor of economics at a prestigious university, and my mother, Diane, was a corporate attorney who graduated at the top of her class. Our household operated like a small academic institution, with dinner conversations revolving around scholarly articles, economic theories, and legal precedents. Then there was my older brother, Richard. For years my senior, he was the golden child in every sense of the word. Straight A's from kindergarten through high school, valedictorian, perfect SAT scores, and acceptance letters from every Ivy League school he applied to. His room was a shrine to academic achievement, walls adorned with certificates, medals, and trophies. My parents beamed with pride whenever they introduced him to colleagues or friends. I was different from the start. It wasn't that I couldn't excel academically when I applied myself. My IQ tests always came back with impressive results, and teachers would tell my parents I had enormous potential. But traditional education never captured my imagination the way it did for Richard. While he devoured textbooks, I was taking apart computers and rebuilding them. When he wrote award-winning essays on macroeconomic theory, I was teaching myself how to code. Alexandra has her head in the clouds, my father would say with a sigh. If only she applied herself like Richard. That comparison became the soundtrack of my childhood. Richard was focused, disciplined, goal-oriented. I was scattered, creative, and apparently unfocused. What they failed to see was that I was intensely focused, just on different things. By the time I was 13, I had built my first computer from salvaged parts. At 15, I created a primitive algorithm to help my high school library catalog their books more efficiently. The librarian, Mrs. Winters, was the first adult who seemed to truly appreciate my skills. "You think differently, Alex," she told me. "That's not a weakness, it's a superpower." Unfortunately, my parents didn't share her perspective. My room wasn't decorated with academic achievements, but with circuit boards, programming books, and sketches of app interfaces. My father would walk by, glance in with a frown, and mutter something about wasting potential. Despite the tension, I managed to get accepted into a good university, though not an Ivy League like Richard. My parents made it clear this was a disappointment, but they masked it with phrases like, "It's still a respectable school," and "You can always transfer if you improve your grades." College should have been a fresh start, but I quickly found myself suffocating in the structured environment. The computer science program was teaching outdated languages, and the professors seemed more interested in theory than practical application. Meanwhile, Richard was thriving at Harvard Business School, on his way to an MBA that would make our parents even prouder. Everything changed during my sophomore year when I met Maya Johnson in an entrepreneurship elective course. She was a marketing major with a razor-sharp business mind and the kind of confidence I'd always envied in Richard. Unlike most people, she didn't dismiss my ideas as impractical or unrealistic. "You're onto something big," she said after I explained my concept for a data analytics platform that could help small businesses compete with corporate giants. "This isn't just a student project, Alex. This could be a company." Those words changed the trajectory of my life. For weeks, Maya and I worked obsessively on a business plan. The technology one envisioned would use artificial intelligence to analyze consumer data in ways that small businesses could actually afford and implement. At the time, advanced data analytics was only accessible to companies with massive budgets and in-house data scientists. When I made the decision to drop out and pursue this full-time, it was like dropping a bomb in my family's living room. My mother cried. My father paced the floor, listing all the ways I was ruining my life. Richard, home for the weekend from Harvard, sat with a smug expression. This is what happens when you don't have clear goals, he lectured. You make impulsive, irrational decisions. It's not impulsive, I tried to explain. I've been working on this concept for months. The technology is viable, and there's a huge gap in the market. My father threw up his hands. A gap in the market? You're 20 years old. What do you know about markets or business? Your brother is studying these things from world-class professors, and even he wouldn't presume to drop out and start a company. That night marked a fracture in my family relationships that would only widen with time. I packed my things and moved into a tiny apartment with Maya, determined to prove them wrong but also deeply hurt by their lack of faith in me. The look of disappointment in my mother's eyes and the dismissive wave of my father's hand would fuel many late nights of work in the months to come. Maya and I started our company, Analytica, with combined savings of just $11,000. Our office was the living room of our cramped one-bedroom apartment, with a folding table serving as our desk and milk crates as filing cabinets. I slept on a futon in the living room while Maya took the bedroom, and we switched every 2 weeks to be fair. Our concept was revolutionary yet simple, democratizing data analytics for small businesses. Large corporations were already using sophisticated AI tools to understand customer behavior, optimize pricing, and predict market trends. Small businesses were left behind, relying on gut feelings or basic spreadsheets. Our platform would change that, providing enterprise-level insights at affordable prices. We're creating a weapon for David to fight Goliath, Maya would say during our practice pitches. The early days were brutal. I coded for 18 hours straight some days, fueled by ramen noodles and energy drinks. Maya worked her network tirelessly, trying to arrange meetings with potential investors and mentors. We faced rejection after rejection. You don't have enough experience. The market isn't ready for this. Come back when you've finished your degrees. Your technology isn't proven. Each no felt like validation for my family's doubts, but we persisted. A breakthrough came when we met Benjamin Taylor, a retired tech executive who had sold his cybersecurity company for millions. Unlike other potential mentors, Benjamin didn't focus on our age or lack of degrees. Show me how it works, he said simply. I demonstrated our prototype, explaining how our algorithms could process unstructured data from multiple sources and generate actionable insights. Benjamin watched intently, asking sharp questions that pushed me to articulate our vision more clearly. You're onto something significant, he said when I finished. But you need to refine your pitch. Investors aren't buying your technology, they're buying the problem you solve. Benjamin became our first advisor, working with us for equity instead of cash. His guidance was invaluable. But we still faced an uphill battle with investors. Many wouldn't even take a meeting once they learned I was a college dropout with no track record. Richard's voice seemed to echo in my head during each rejection. This is why credentials matter, Alex. He would call occasionally, always beginning with updates about his academic achievements before asking about my little project in a tone that suggested he was humoring me. There's still time to go back to school, he would remind me. Dad could probably pull some strings to get you readmitted. These conversations inevitably left me doubting myself, wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. Only Maya's unwavering belief and Benjamin's practical guidance kept me going. Our first major breakthrough came not from an investor but from a client. Jasmine Carter owned a boutique clothing store that was struggling to compete with online retailers. She agreed to try our beta version for free, and within 3 months, her revenue increased by 28%. Our platform had identified purchasing patterns that allowed her to optimize inventory and create targeted marketing campaigns. Jasmine became our most vocal advocate, introducing us to other small business owners. Suddenly, we had case studies to show potential investors, real-world examples of our technology making a difference. Daniel Green, a partner at Horizon Ventures, finally took notice. He agreed to meet after Benjamin made the introduction, though he seemed skeptical at first. Walk me through how your algorithm differs from existing solutions, he challenged. For 2 hours, I explained our technical approach, the unique way our system learned from diverse data sources, and our vision for scaling. By the end, Daniel's skepticism had transformed into interest. Most founders pitch me on market size and exit strategies, he said. You talk about your technology like an artist describing a masterpiece. That passion is rare. Horizon Ventures provided our seed funding of $500,000, enough to move into a real office, hire our first employees, and accelerate development. Rachel Wilkins joined as our head of product development, bringing experience from a major tech company and becoming a crucial ally in our growing team. The investment was validation, but it came with increased pressure. Now we had responsibility to our investors, our small team, and the clients who were beginning to depend on our platform. I worked even longer hours, often sleeping on a couch in our new office. The distance between my family and me continued to grow. When I shared news of our funding round, my mother responded with cautious congratulations while my father reminded me that initial funding is just the beginning of a long road. Richard sent a text that read, "Congrats. Hope it works out. If not, Harvard has a great program for returning students." Their lack of enthusiasm stung, but I channeled that disappointment into determination. Every doubt they expressed became fuel for my drive to succeed. 3 years passed in a blur of growth, challenges, and small victories. Analytica expanded from just Maya and me to a team of 50 passionate employees occupying an entire floor of a downtown office building. Our client base grew from a handful of local businesses to over 500 companies across the country, ranging from family restaurants to mid-size manufacturing firms. Our office culture became something I was deeply proud of. We built a company that valued innovation and kindness in equal measure. Every Monday morning, we gathered for solution sessions where anyone could present a challenge they were facing and the team would brainstorm answers. Thursdays featured demo days where developers showcased new features or improvements. The walls were covered with whiteboards filled with code snippets, flowcharts, and occasionally terrible office jokes. I made a point of knowing every employee by name and understanding their role in our ecosystem. Rachel, now our Chief Product Officer, often teased me about my hands-on approach. Most CEOs don't debug code at 2 in the morning, she said after finding me in the office one night. Most CEOs didn't build their product from scratch. I replied. While Analytica flourished, Richard completed his MBA at Harvard with honors and landed a prestigious position at Blackwell Financial, one of the largest investment firms in the country. His career advanced rapidly, and my parents never missed an opportunity to highlight his achievements. Richard just closed a $100 million deal, my mother would mention during our increasingly rare phone calls. Or, the Wall Street Journal quoted Richard in an article about emerging markets. I tried to share my own milestones, like when we were featured in a tech magazine or when we launched a major platform update, but these announcements were usually met with polite interest at best. My father would invariably steer the conversation back to sustainable business models and exit strategies, as if Analytica was a hobby rather than a growing company. Have you considered bringing in more experienced leadership? He asked during one particularly difficult conversation. Companies often outgrow their founders, especially when those founders lack formal business education. Each interaction reinforced what I'd always felt. In my family's eyes, I would always be the underachiever, the one who took the unconventional path. The tension came to a head when Centaur Tech, a major player in enterprise software, approached us with an acquisition offer of $40 million. For a company our size, it was a substantial valuation. Maya was ecstatic when we received the offer letter. "This is validation of everything we've built," she said, eyes wide as she looked at the number. But something didn't feel right to me. Our newest product developments were showing tremendous promise, and our growth metrics were accelerating. More importantly, we were just beginning to realize our mission of making advanced analytics accessible to smaller businesses. After days of deliberation and many late-night discussions with Maya, Rachel, and Benjamin, I decided to decline the offer. This was a pivotal moment for Analytica, and I believed we had much more value to create independently. When news of the declined offer reached my family, Richard called immediately. "You turned down $40 million?" he asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and condescension. "That's exactly the kind of emotional decision-making they warn against in business school." "It wasn't emotional," I countered. "We analyzed our growth trajectory, the market opportunity, and the value of our intellectual property." "Alex, be realistic. You got lucky with a good idea, but you're competing in a space with giants who have billions in resources. Taking the money would have been the smart play." "We believe in what we're building, Richard." He sighed in that familiar way that made me feel like a child. "This is why experience and education matter. You simply don't understand business at this level." That conversation haunted me for weeks, making me second-guess my decision despite the strong rationale behind it. But as the months passed, our choice was validated. We launched our next-generation platform, which included predictive analytics features previously only available to enterprise clients. Small businesses could now not only understand their current customers, but predict future trends and behaviors. The response was overwhelming. Our user base doubled in 6 months, and revenue grew even faster as existing clients upgraded to premium tiers. We expanded internationally, opening a small office in London to serve European clients. Tech publications began to take notice, and I was invited to speak at industry conferences. A profile in Business Innovator magazine called Analytica, the dark horse disrupting the data analytics industry, and me, a visionary leader challenging traditional paths to tech success. I sent a copy of the magazine to my parents, hoping this external validation might finally change their perception. My mother called to say she was proud, but my father's response was telling. He asked if the publicity would help when we eventually decided to sell the company. The invitation to Richard's promotion party arrived via email. A formal digital card announcing his elevation to Vice President of Strategy at Blackwell Financial. The event would be held at an exclusive downtown club, with a guest list including company executives, business associates, and family. My initial instinct was to decline. Our interactions had become increasingly strained, and the thought of spending an evening being compared unfavorably to my brother held little appeal. But Maya encouraged me to go. "Maybe it's time to rebuild some bridges," she suggested. "Besides, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Analytica is thriving." I decided she was right. Perhaps seeing our success firsthand would finally earn my family's respect. I bought a new dress, prepared some pleasant talking points about our company's growth, and arrived at the venue with a mix of hope and apprehension. The party was exactly what I expected: elegant, formal, and filled with the kind of networking that felt more like strategic chess than genuine human connection. My parents were in their element, introducing Richard to important contacts and beaming with undisguised pride. "Alexandra, you made it," my mother said when she spotted me, kissing me briefly on the cheek. There was genuine warmth in her greeting, though it was quickly followed by, "Richard is over there with the CEO. Come say hello when they're finished." My father merely nodded in my direction before returning to his conversation with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. I found myself relegated to the periphery, making small talk with distant relatives and my brother's acquaintances who seemed unclear about what I did for a living. "So you work with computers?" asked my father's cousin after I explained Analytica's mission. "We develop artificial intelligence solutions for business analytics," I clarified. "How interesting," she replied, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Is that like making websites?" The evening continued in this vein until dinner was served and the formal speeches began. The CEO of Blackwell Financial praised Richard's analytical mind and leadership qualities. My father spoke next, delivering an emotional tribute to his son's dedication and intelligence. From the time he was a boy, Richard understood the value of education, hard work, and strategic thinking, he said, his voice swelling with emotion. He has never taken shortcuts or been distracted by passing fads. He built his career methodically, earning every credential and proving his worth at each step. I felt each word like a pointed jab, the subtext clear to anyone who knew our family dynamics. In my father's worldview, I was the opposite of everything he was praising in Richard: impulsive, distracted, and worst of all, unaccredited. Then it was Richard's turn to speak. He thanked his bosses, colleagues, and parents with practiced eloquence. Just as I thought I'd escaped mention entirely, he turned in my direction. And I'd like to acknowledge my sister, Alexandra, who's here tonight. While we've taken very different paths, family is always family. A polite murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the room. I forced a smile, thinking this awkward recognition was the extent of it. I was wrong. In fact, Richard continued, his expression shifting to something I recognized from our childhood arguments. I might have some exciting news to share soon about a family business collaboration. Confused murmurs and interested glances followed this statement. I sat frozen, having no idea what he was talking about. Many of you don't know that my sister started a small tech company after dropping out of college. It's been her project for the past few years. And while it's had some moderate success, it's reaching the point where amateur enthusiasm needs to be supplemented with professional management. The room had gone completely silent. I felt heat rising in my face as 50 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I've been consulting with our father, Richard continued, seemingly oblivious to my mortification. And we believe the time has come for Analytica to be brought under more experienced leadership. I'm planning to acquire a controlling interest and integrate their technology into Blackwell's portfolio of services. He raised his glass. To family collaborations and knowing when to pass the baton. Glasses rose around the room as people toasted, though several guests looked uncomfortable with the clearly unexpected announcement. My father was nodding approvingly from his seat. My mother's expression was unreadable. I sat in stunned silence, my mind racing to process what had just happened. Richard had essentially announced a hostile takeover of my company at his promotion party, framing it as a rescue mission for his useless Dropout sister's failing business. When the toast concluded and conversation resumed, I excused myself from the table and made my way toward the exit. My mother intercepted me near the door. "Alexandra, don't leave like this," she said quietly. "Richard means well. He and your father have been discussing how to help you for months." "Help me?" I repeated incredulously. "Mom, Analytica is projecting 8-figure revenue this year. We don't need help, and we're certainly not for sale," she sighed. "Sweetheart, be practical. Richard has the credentials and connections to take what you've started to the next level. Isn't that what you want?" In that moment, I realized that no amount of success would ever change how my family saw me. In their eyes, I would always be the dropout who needed saving. And Richard would always be the golden child with the right answers. "I have to go," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Congratulate Richard for me." I left without another word, the cool night air a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. As I waited for my rideshare, my phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "We should meet tomorrow to discuss terms. I'll come to your office at 10 a.m. The presumption was so breathtaking that I couldn't even formulate a response. Instead, I turned off my phone and spent the ride home in silent contemplation of what had just become the most humiliating night of my adult life. The apartment was dark when I returned home. I kicked off my heels at the door, not bothering to turn on the lights as I made my way to the couch. The dress I'd carefully selected for the evening suddenly felt constrictive, a metaphor for how I felt around my family. I changed into sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, an ironic choice given the circumstances. My phone, which I'd turned back on during the ride, vibrated with messages. Maya had texted 3 times. "How's the party going? Are you okay? You haven't responded. Call me when you can. I'm worried." Rachel had also messaged. "Working late at the office. Some interesting developments with the European market data. Let me know if you want to discuss before morning." I called Maya first, knowing she'd still be awake. "They ambushed me," I said as soon as she answered, my voice cracking slightly. The composure I'd maintained throughout the evening was finally slipping. "What happened?" Maya's voice was instantly alert. I recounted the evening in detail, From the subtle slights to Richard's public announcement of his plans to rescue Analytica. He can't do that, Maya said firmly. He has no legal standing to acquire anything. We own this company, not him. I know that, but he doesn't seem to. And my father is backing him completely. I paused, the reality of the situation sinking in. Richard is coming to the office tomorrow morning to discuss terms as if this is a done deal. This is outrageous. Maya's voice had taken on the steely quality it got when she was truly angry. Do you want me to be there? Yes, I said without hesitation. And I think we should call Rachel too. After finishing with Maya, I called Rachel and gave her a shortened version of events. Her response was characteristically analytical. This could actually be an opportunity, she said after a moment of thought. Not to sell, obviously, but to clarify some things for your family. What do you mean? I mean that maybe it's time they saw exactly what you've built while they've been dismissing you. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing our company's journey. From the tiny apartment office to our current success. I pulled up our latest financial reports, product roadmaps, and client testimonials. If Richard wanted to talk business, I would be prepared. Around 3 a.m, I received an email from my father. The subject line read simply, "Tomorrow's meeting. Alexandra. Richard has informed me of his plans to meet with you tomorrow regarding the acquisition of your company. I believe this is the most sensible path forward and strongly encourage you to approach the discussion with an open mind. Richard has the education and experience to scale what you've started properly, and this arrangement would keep the business in the family while providing you with a fair compensation package. Your mother and I believe this is in everyone's best interest. Dad." The email confirmed what I already knew but still hit like a physical blow. My father had not once asked about Analytica's actual performance or my vision for its future. He had simply assumed Richard's narrative that my company needed saving was accurate. I forwarded the email to Maya and Rachel, then sent a message to Benjamin asking if he could join a video call in the morning. As my advisor and someone who commanded respect in the business world, his presence might help temper Richard's arrogance. At 4:30, unable to stay in the apartment any longer, I showered and headed to the office. The streets were quiet. The city still sleeping as I walked into our building. The security guard looked surprised to see me so early. "Working before the sun today, Ms. Walker? Big meeting." I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. In my office, I began organizing the materials I wanted to have on hand. Our latest valuation reports, growth metrics, client acquisition costs, and retention rates. I pulled up case studies showing how our platform had transformed businesses. I prepared slides highlighting our proprietary technology and pending patents. At 7, I messaged Daniel at Horizon Ventures, asking if he could make time for a quick call. His response was immediate despite the early hour. "For you, always. What's up?" I explained the situation briefly, and he listened without interrupting. "This is actually perfect timing," he said when I finished. "I was going to call you later today anyway. The partners have been discussing Analytica's progress, and we'd like to lead your Series B round. We're prepared to offer terms that would value the company at $99 million. The figure momentarily stunned me into silence. Our last formal valuation had been at $62 million, and while I knew we'd grown significantly since then, hearing this number put everything in sharp perspective. "Would you be willing to join a call this morning?" I asked. "My brother is coming to the office to discuss acquiring Analytica, and I think hearing directly from our lead investor might help clarify some misconceptions." Daniel agreed immediately, saying he'd make himself available at 10:30. As I ended the call, a plan was forming in my mind. Richard and my father believed they were coming to rescue a struggling startup run by an inexperienced dropout. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. At 8, Maya arrived carrying coffee and breakfast sandwiches. Rachel joined us shortly after, bringing the latest user metrics and a prototype demonstration of our newest feature set. By 9, we had mapped out our strategy for the meeting. At 9:45, Benjamin joined via video conference for a final review of our approach. His advice was characteristically direct. "Don't get emotional. Let the numbers speak for themselves. And remember, you have nothing to prove to them, even though it feels like you do. At 9:55, the receptionist called to let me know that Richard had arrived, accompanied by our father. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and nodded to Maya and Rachel. "Let's go greet our guests," I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. This confrontation had been years in the making, and I was finally ready for it. Richard and my father stood in our reception area, looking oddly out of place among the modern furniture and vibrant company culture posters. Richard wore an expensive suit that screamed corporate finance, while my father had opted for his professional academic look, complete with elbow patches on his blazer. "Alexandra," my father nodded formally. "Your brother has taken time away from his responsibilities to discuss this opportunity with you." "Good morning, Dad," I replied evenly. "Richard, welcome to Analytica." Richard glanced around with barely concealed condescension. "Nice space. Very startup chic." "We like it," I said simply. "Would you like a tour before we talk?" "That won't be necessary," Richard replied. "We should get straight to business. I have another meeting at noon." Of course, I gestured toward our main conference room. "Right this way." As we walked through the open office space, I could see their expressions shift slightly as they took in the scope of our operation. Developers huddled around screens discussing code. The marketing team was in the midst of a campaign planning session. Our customer success managers were on calls with clients, their conversations animated and productive. This wasn't the struggling startup they had imagined. This was a thriving technology company with a clear mission and engaged employees. In the conference room, Maya and Rachel were waiting. I made introductions, noticing how Richard's eyes narrowed slightly when I referred to Maya as co-founder and chief operating officer and Rachel as chief product officer. "Shall we begin?" I said, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I understand you have a proposal to discuss." Richard straightened his tie and slipped effortlessly into what I recognized as his presentation mode. "As I mentioned last night, I've been evaluating Analytica's position in the market and believe there's an opportunity for strategic integration with Blackwell Financial's portfolio." He opened his briefcase and removed a folder of documents, sliding them across the table to me. "I've prepared an initial offer to acquire a controlling interest 60% of Analytica for $4.5 million, which represents a fair valuation of $7.5 million for the entire company." Maya made a small choking sound beside me, which she quickly covered with a cough. I kept my expression neutral as I glanced at the documents without touching them. "That's interesting," I said calmly. "What factors did you consider in this valuation?" Richard launched into an explanation filled with MBA jargon about comparable company analysis, discounted cash flow models, and market multiples. He emphasized Analytica's limited market penetration and lack of institutional backing as significant risk factors that justified the low valuation. My father nodded along, occasionally adding comments like, "Richard spent 3 months on valuation models during his second year at Harvard," or "Blackwell's acquisition team uses Richard's framework for their deals now." When Richard finally finished his presentation, he sat back with the satisfied expression of someone who believes they've delivered an irrefutable argument. "Any questions?" he asked, with the air of someone who didn't expect any substantive challenges. "Just one," I replied. "Would you be interested in seeing our actual numbers before we discuss your offer further?" Without waiting for a response, I activated the room's presentation system. The large screen on the wall came to life, displaying our company dashboard with real-time metrics. Analytica currently serves 728 active business clients across 12 countries, I began. Our year-over-year revenue growth is 137%, with a customer retention rate of 92%, well above industry standard. I clicked through to the next slide, showing our technology architecture. Our platform processes over 8 terabytes of data daily, generating predictive insights with an accuracy rate that exceeds any competitor in our price range. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through a comprehensive overview of Analytica's business reality, our client base, revenue streams, proprietary technology, and growth trajectory. Rachel demonstrated our newest AI-powered features, showing how they were revolutionizing decision-making for small to medium businesses. Richard's expression gradually shifted from confident to confused to concerned. My father's bushy eyebrows had risen steadily throughout the presentation. "This is all very impressive," Richard finally said, clearly recalibrating his approach. "But it doesn't change the fact that with professional management and Blackwell's resources, you could scale much more effectively." "That's an interesting perspective," I replied. "But before we continue that discussion, there's something else you should know." I glanced at my watch. "In about 2 minutes. We'll be joined by some other participants in this conversation." On cue, the video conference system chimed, and the screen split to show Daniel from Horizon Ventures. "Good morning, everyone," Daniel said. "Alex, Maya, Rachel, good to see you. And these must be your brother and father I've heard about." Richard stared at the screen, recognition dawning on his face. Daniel Green was well known in financial circles, his venture fund having backed some of the most successful tech companies of the past decade. "Mr. Green," Richard said, his voice taking on a deferential tone I'd never heard him use with me. "This is unexpected. I wanted to join today because I understand there's some confusion about Analytica's market position and value," Daniel continued. "As the lead investor since their seed round, I thought I might help clarify things." Daniel proceeded to explain Horizon's assessment of Analytica's growth and potential, concluding with the bombshell. "That's why we're prepared to lead a Series B funding round that values Analytica at $99 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's mouth actually dropped open slightly before he caught himself. My father had gone completely still. Additionally, Daniel continued, "I've invited someone else to join us briefly." The screen split again to show Cassandra Reynolds, CEO of Meridian Systems, one of the largest enterprise software companies in the country. "Hello, Analytica team," Cassandra smiled. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Ms. Reynolds," Richard stammered, clearly recognizing another industry heavyweight. "What's your interest in this discussion?" "Straight to the point, I like that," Cassandra nodded. "Meridian has been watching Analytica's development for some time now. Their approach to democratizing data analytics aligns with our mission of making technology more accessible. We're not interested in acquiring Analytica, but we are very interested in a strategic partnership that would bring their platform to our enterprise clients while maintaining their independence." As if the situation wasn't overwhelming enough for Richard and my father, Maya signaled to our development team who had been waiting outside. They entered carrying tablets and proceeded to demonstrate our next-generation platform, the one that had attracted Meridian's attention. This version incorporates advanced machine learning algorithms that adapt to industry-specific patterns, Rachel explained, taking over the demonstration. It essentially becomes more valuable the more it's used, creating a network effect that benefits all our clients. By the time the demonstrations concluded, Richard's acquisition proposal lay forgotten on the table. The $4.5 million offer that had seemed so generous in his mind now appeared almost comically inadequate. "I think," my father said, breaking his long silence, "that we may have misunderstood the scope of your company, Alexandra." It was the closest thing to an admission of error I had ever heard from him. Richard was less gracious. "You should have been clearer about your actual position," he said stiffly. "This changes the parameters of any potential deal." "I wasn't aware I needed to prove Analytica's value to my own family," I replied, keeping my voice level. "But I'm glad we've had this opportunity to clear up any misconceptions." The meeting concluded shortly after, with Richard and my father leaving in obvious discomfort. Daniel and Cassandra remained on the video call for a few minutes longer, discussing next steps for our respective business relationships. As the conference room door closed behind my family members, I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, sadness, and, strangely, a sense of freedom. For years, I had sought their approval and validation. Today, I realized I no longer needed it. The silence in the conference room after Richard and my father left was broken by Maya's slow applause. "That," she said with a wide grin, "was the most professionally executed takedown I've ever witnessed." Rachel nodded in agreement. Their faces when Daniel announced the valuation. I wish we'd recorded it. While their reaction made me smile, I felt oddly hollow. The victory was complete but bittersweet. I had finally proven my worth by conventional metrics my family would understand. But the fact that I needed to do so at all revealed how broken our relationship had become. "You okay?" Maya asked, noticing my expression. "Just processing," I replied. "Let's focus on what matters. We have a Series B to prepare for and a partnership with Meridian to develop." The team dispersed, energized by the morning's events and the exciting opportunities ahead. I retreated to my office, needing a moment alone. Benjamin called a few minutes later. "You did well," he said simply. "How are you feeling?" "Like I won a battle I never wanted to fight," I admitted. "Family is complicated," Benjamin replied. "Give them time to adjust their perception of you. It won't happen overnight." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The funding round with Horizon Ventures proceeded smoothly, and news of our $99 million valuation made headlines in tech publications. Our partnership with Meridian Systems was announced, sending our user numbers soaring as enterprise clients began adopting our platform alongside their existing solutions. The office buzzed with energy as we hired new team members and expanded our operations. We moved into larger quarters, taking over an entire building in the downtown tech district. The company I had started in a tiny apartment was now a recognized innovator in the industry. Throughout this period of growth, I heard nothing from Richard or my father. Their silence spoke volumes. But I found myself less affected by it than I would have been in the past. My mother, however, reached out unexpectedly about 3 weeks after the confrontation. "I saw your company in the business section," she said when I answered her call. $99 million is quite a valuation. "It is," I agreed, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I never really understood what you were building," she continued, her voice softer than usual. "I think maybe none of us did." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. And I recognized how difficult even that must have been for her. "Would you like to come see the new office sometime?" I offered. "Get a better understanding of what we do." She accepted. And her visit the following week marked the beginning of a gradual thawing in our relationship. She asked thoughtful questions, watched demonstrations of our platform with genuine interest, and even laughed when Maya shared stories from our early startup days. "You've created something remarkable, Alexandra," she said before leaving. "I'm proud of you." Those simple words, which I had longed to hear for years, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Richard eventually sent an email, brief and formal, congratulating me on the funding round and partnership. "It appears your unconventional approach has yielded results," he wrote. "I respect what you've accomplished." It wasn't warm, but coming from Richard, it was significant. My father remained distant, though my mother assured me he had been impressed by the valuation and press coverage. Some relationships, I was learning, might never fully heal, and that had to be okay. As Analytica continued to grow, I found myself increasingly asked to speak at conferences and events, often addressing topics like alternative paths to success and women in technology. I shared my story openly, including the family struggles and self-doubt I had overcome. These talks resonated deeply, particularly with young people questioning traditional career paths. We established a mentorship program at Analytica, specifically designed to support unconventional thinkers and those without traditional credentials, but with enormous potential. Several of our most innovative team members came through this program, including a brilliant 19-year-old developer who had taught herself coding while working night shifts at a gas station. The journey of healing my own wounds was gradual and ongoing. There were still moments when I doubted myself or when an offhand comment would trigger old insecurities. But these instances became less frequent and less powerful. I was learning that validation from others, even family, was less important than believing in myself and my vision. 6 months after the confrontation, Analytica was featured in a major business magazine, with my photo on the cover. The article, titled "The Dropout Revolution," detailed our company's success and unconventional origin story. I sent copies to my family without comment. My mother called immediately after receiving it. My father sent a short email saying he had read it with interest. Richard sent a text that simply read, "Well done." These small acknowledgments no longer defined my sense of worth. But they were steps toward a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical approval. The most profound lesson I learned through this journey wasn't about business strategy or technology innovation. It was about the courage to define success on your own terms and the strength to stay true to your vision when those closest to you doubt your path. I no longer needed my family to validate my choices or achievements. I had built something valuable not despite dropping out of college, but because I had followed my passion and trusted my instincts. The very qualities that had made me an outsider in my family had become my greatest strengths as an entrepreneur and leader. Today, Analytica continues to grow and evolve. We're expanding internationally, developing new technologies, and helping thousands of businesses succeed through data-driven insights. The journey hasn't been easy, and it certainly hasn't been conventional, but it has been authentically mine. Sometimes, being underestimated is your greatest advantage. The question isn't whether others believe in you, but whether you're brave enough to believe in yourself when no one else does. Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated your abilities? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear that their unconventional path might just be their superpower. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, success isn't measured by degrees or titles, but by the impact you create and the authenticity with which you live.